Hi, everyone. So excited to bring you this week's episode featuring one of my dear friends and close colleagues, Sara Rojas. So, Sara and I first crossed paths back in 2014 when I was starting a new career. And what I really enjoyed and loved about my first interactions with Sara, and what you'll find in today's episode, is that it is impossible to put one word to her name. She is such a dynamic person when it comes to what she brings to the professional world in her HR professionalism and the way that she leads her teams and the various teams she's had the honor of leading, even just in the last few years that I've known her and been able to watch her really thrive and succeed by being true to herself. But another thing that I love about Sara is that she is one of those people that just is seemingly fearless. So I'm going to unpack that today and learn a little bit more about how she does it, because you'll learn about Sara's career that she really has dealt with a lot of change and has been very eager to grow. And with that comes some agility and kind of adapting to some change that maybe her career, maybe you can relate some change that's been thrown your way. And what are some ways that we can all better adapt to that change? I think this year is such a great example of that, right? So I'm going to just let her drop all the knowledge on you now. So let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. You're seriously such a prime candidate for just a voice of reason right now, because it's been a crazy year. I know you know that more than most, because a lot of people have been remote, and that's the crazy part, or have homeschooled. And I'm not saying that that's not equally as crazy, but I think for thinking about talking to you, I'm like, you have not left your workspace, and you have had to figure out how to fly the plane while it's in the air, or like rebuild the plane while it's in the air. So I was like, man, I got to get Sara on this.
No, I'm super excited. I was like, I'm flattered.
Just kind of set the stage, maybe in case our listeners don't quite understand what the HR world is looking like right now. So if you have a friend in HR, send them a virtual hug, because not only today are HR professionals concerned about employees' health and well-being. As we said before, Sara has not worked from home. She's been at her hotel because guests come to the hotel and they need to have a physical person to check them in, not a virtual robot. We've got to be there for our guests, right? So also our HR professionals are under the strain of processing the paperwork, providing solace to the workers that have been laid off or furloughed, all the while for the employees that are still on the job, pumping them up, getting them motivated to do the job that looks very different than what they had signed up to do, right? So all of these factors are moving targets as you're trying to kind of understand what is the new normal with that ever-changing target that's continuing to move. Does that about sum it up, Sara?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that sometimes it's adapting to a change that we know will be good to us. But I think this year, it's a little bit of a different facet of change, because it's one of those things that was thrust upon us all, and like nobody wanted this to happen, but here we are.
This has definitely been a roller coaster, Audrey. I talked to a lot of people about, this whole thing, and there were definitely some days where you're just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? But it's been a really cool learning experience. I think just observing just the dynamic and psychology of people, how they're dealing with all of this. And it's been really interesting, but it's also been very inspiring, of course, as you know, for anyone, that all of us that still have jobs, we're just grateful to be here. And we're like, whatever you need, wherever you want me to go.
I might cry a little bit, but I will figure it out.
I know. And I think companies have also probably have gotten the opportunity to really keep the people that really want to rally, and the people that really are willing to keep the company going, which is really cool, to see. I mean, it's of course exhausting for a lot of people that went from teens to nothing, but it's been a learning experience for all of us, for sure.
I think in hospitality, you're always on your toes, and being in the hotel industry, you think you've seen it all. And then now it's like, okay, I really think I've seen it all. And wherever you go from here, you have that experience that you're like, this is not like 2020. This is not that bad. Or, hey guys, last year, like, this kind of sucks. But
yes, it's so funny. When this whole thing started, I remember the beginning of it. I remember telling, our regionals, Toby's and Georgia's, and I'm like, this is going to be madness for just the HR world. Like, our HR world is about to turn upside down. And I remember just like thinking, like, okay, mentally preparing ourselves. It's going to be a whole new world. Like Aladdin, I used to tell them, I'm like, it's a whole new world. The Aladdin theme song should be here, because it really, the type of issues that we were seeing, and it's just, everything was so different. And I was just like mentally getting ourselves, it's gonna change. And of course it did. But I also feel like we just blinked and now we're here. And I'm like, what happened to the last 6 months? Somebody was joking about, oh, I bet you were gonna see Tiger King Halloween costumes, and everyone related that to, oh, remember quarantine back in March and April? I'm like, I feel like that was so long ago, but that was literally what, like 3-4 months
It was like
ago.
a blip on the whole pandemic picture. Yeah.
So it's crazy that that's like a thing, and everything just happened so fast.
Yeah. And you had nothing to like benchmark it against. It wasn't like, oh, well, the last pandemic lasted this long. It's like in the 20s, or like you said, the whole new world. We don't know what to compare it to. We don't know what we don't know, and we're going to do the best we can on any given day. And we're going to smile through the pain, and we're going to try to figure it out, because we don't really have another choice, right?
Exactly. It's literally just adjusting, and it's just kind of thinking quick on your feet and not letting the craziness bring you down. Because I mean, it can be so emotional during Audrey. I mean, I can tell you that there were some days, and it like gives me goosebumps, that I would literally come home, or when they're telling us, hey, here is the list of people that you've got to call and say you no longer have a paycheck. I would literally just sit in my garage and like breathe and just like cry for a good like 20-30 seconds, and you're like, all right, I just needed that.
This shall pass. It will. We'll get through this. And it sounds like you've just kept a great attitude. I know we have those moments where we have those breakdowns and we're like, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to get up in the morning and do this again, but we do. We do hard things when we have to, and then we know that we can do hard things, and then it's something that's kind of like in our toolkit or in our arsenal that we can use, even though we don't want to. We don't want to have to do that, right? But I think that's probably one of the things that you've taken away from this. And then I've known you, Sara, and I'll tell our listeners, I call our listeners the Pod Squad, and they haven't told me they hate it yet. So the Pod Squad, I'm going to tell them a little bit about you. So Sara and I think we crossed paths, it was 2014, maybe 2015. I remember we met because you were coming back into the office to see Toby, and I know there was some formal business reason, but I just remember like you were HR goals. Like you were just dressed at the time, legs for days, coming in here in the HR office, all confident and just the kindest person, and just seeing like the whole team come in and bombard, Sara's here, Sara's here. And I was like, wow, I got some pretty big shoes to fill. This is great. Like just from the first moment I met you, I just, your personality, your empathy, and the way that you connected with everybody, even after being gone and coming right back, it was like you never left. So I think for me, Sara, it was such a great pleasure to get to know you, and through the last 5-6 years, being able to see your career, your advancement, and see you go amazing places and do amazing things. So I wanted to give a little background to our listeners. So Sara, tell us a little bit about so we already established you're in the HR profession, but pre this year, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey in the industry.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just glad that I wasn't like sassy to you or anything, that you thought it was so nice. Sometimes you just wonder like who's watching, right? So I actually, funny enough, so I, through college, I went to UCF in Orlando, and I had, 3 jobs at the time. I had an internship. Well, before the internship, I had a couple of jobs, just trying to, my goal was to never have to go back home, right? So I just wanted to make sure I had enough funds to not have to ever, end up at home. And of course, my parents didn't have much, so we were just trying to make sure that I was sustaining, right? So I ended up actually meeting a customer of mine. I was a bartender at a restaurant in Orlando, and she was my regular for years. And after talking, one of the last few times I saw her, she mentioned that she worked for this company, and she was like, I really think that you will be really good as a recruiter. She never said HR. She just said as a recruiter. And I'm like, well, I don't know much about that. I just know I want to do HR. Introduces me to the right people. That's a silly story on that side, because I didn't realize I was actually talking to the potential decision makers, and one of the guys like make fun of some of my drinks or something, and I as a joke came back and did a little bit of sass situation.
Yeah, no way.
And they apparently, like, I heard the story after the fact when I walked away, they're like, oh my God, she's got a sense of humor. And I was like, oh my God, I just ruined my chances of having an internship. And I was freaking out, being all stressed. But it turned out that, you know, they really liked the personality and how easygoing I was during that whole interaction. So I ended up as an intern first for a, you know, the timeshare recruiting team, which was truly, truly a wake up call. Because, you know, all I knew was college books and recruiting and you know, coaching and trainings. I didn't know the real world. And I remember my first week just sitting there like, I'm like, what? This is 100 miles an hour. And it was interviews after interviews. And this is an industry in timeshare where, you know, you're hiring volume. So that was a really, really cool experience as an intern, right? I was just literally doing administrative and just watching. And then from there on, I had an opportunity to work as a coordinator in HR for the hotel industry. And I was there for about a year and a half, close to 2 years, until I was offered a position as a sales and marketing recruiter for South Florida in the Caribbean. And of course, there's young me, super excited, just thinking anything outside of the States. I'm just thinking it's so cool, right? I mean, that's still States territory, I guess, but great experience. However, I looking back now, I'm like, how did I find the confidence or strength to even go for this job? Because it was, once again, volume. It was by myself, but I had a great mentor that basically believed in me. And she said, I'm not going to let you fall. And I remember her telling me, I got you. Don't worry. I'm going to back you up. I'll give you the tools. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, it was my first panel interview. There were about 6 people in the room. Mind you, I was a coordinator. So I'm like, what am I supposed to do? It was a learning experience. Let's keep it together. And it worked out great. Got the job, was there for about 2 years. And so I decided to come back to HR and the hotel side.
Before that, what kind of accolades did you acquire, Missy? You're all modest over there. How did that team recruiting go?
Gosh. I was the recruiter of the year, one of the years, the recruiter of the quarter, a couple of quarters. It was cool too, because remember, you know, athlete mindset, right? As you know, I grew up as a volleyball player in Colombia, and in Colombia, it was, you had to earn your spot. There's no, you know, somebody or mom is the friend of the coach, like you had to earn. So I come back, you know, I grew up in a very competitive mindset. So anytime they said competition, I was like, I can win something. What do I have to do? You know?
Yes.
I'm like, and I don't even think we won anything. It was just the title of winning something. And I just remember feeling like just so excited, and it was a motivating factor for me. So when I came back to HR, I remember asking Toby at the time, I'm like, so do we have any competitions? Like, is there anything in HR? And she's like, Sarah, this is not recruiting anymore, timeshare. And I was like, oh, do we like anything? Like, none at the time, you know? And I was just like, oh man.
Because you facilitate the competitions for other people to win, but HR never gets to win.
Exactly. So yeah, that was actually, I can tell you, Audrey, that working for the timeshare industry and recruiting, mind you, that was not HR. It was pure, just fast-paced, numbers, metrics, interviews. Talk about real boot camp for recruiting. Amazing experience. And it also helped that I had done a little bit of HR, because my business partners in the HR world, you know, we really understood each other. So it was really, really good. So when I came over to the hotel side in South Beach, that was also a different, you know, beast, because anyone that's been to Miami, or specifically South Beach, it's competitive. The hotels are right next to each other.
Off market, right?
So recruiting, you know, was one of the requirements that they really were looking for, and that was really fun. And then, of course, Clearwater came along, and they said, "Would you move to Clearwater and open a brand new project?" Mind you, I've been hearing about this project since I was a coordinator. So I said, "This is even an option?" Because of course.
Absolutely.
So that was an incredible experience, Audrey. I cannot tell you. I worked obviously closely with my boss at the time. Gosh, boss lady definition. You've got to get her hung here after this.
You're right.
Gosh, we worked 10, 12-hour days. It was literally just me and her, moving 100 miles an hour. There were some days that we were up until 2, 3 and go to work the next day at 7 to do whatever we had to do. And But once again, the mentality of moving 100 miles an hour, loved it. It was amazing experience. I didn't want to leave until the boss finally kicked me out and said, it's time to fly. I'm like, I don't want to fly. I don't want to leave. I went to Charleston after that as a director, and that was also a different experience because, of course, all I knew at the time was Florida, South Florida, in the Caribbean, and it was amazing. So much fun. A different market, beautiful culture,
historic downtown, right?
Location was amazing. The people were so welcoming and just so sweet. I mean, we probably made the most friends in Charleston.
Yeah, Southern hospitality.
So sweet. I mean, it was amazing. And now I'm here in Orlando through the madness of everything that's going on. And it's been a really, really fun experience for sure. I'm hoping Orlando's it for a minute, hopefully. But what, 3 to 5 moves in 5 years? It's I'm surprised my boyfriend's still here. Thanks, Kyle, for everything.
He deserves the Boyfriend of the Year medal to go along with your Recruiter of the Year medals, I think.
Exactly. We just won't tell him, but he deserves some credit.
No, that's awesome. I love hearing your story again because I've been able to see it from my perspective, but just to kind of hear what drives you, hear what energizes you, and just thinking about little Sara, like I don't know what recruit, but you went out there and you freaking did it and you crushed it. And I think that like the series that we've talked about, some of the other podcast guest speakers we've talked all about passion, which yours certainly shines through. We talked about just showing up and saying yes, even if you're scared, even if you don't know how it's going to go, or you don't know, you kind of fake it till you make it, right? But it's the first thing is showing up and getting there and being available.
Yeah.
So I think that's I love hearing about your story specifically.
Yeah. Audrey, I love that you say that because that's kind of one of the best lessons that I've learned. And it's just, as long as you just, at some point you kind of have to act as if you know what you're doing, and you just have to be resourceful, right? And I think that was one of the best things that has helped me is always knowing who to call and when to call, and not just have a high ego to where you're like, well, I'm going to figure this out, but just call whoever and sometimes it's something simple, and sometimes it's something where you really need to know when to reach out, but always be composed, and of course trying to keep it together is what we're supposed to do in our world, and in the back end, in the garage crying, and at home freaking out. But when it comes to everybody else, we're supposed to be helping our teams or guiding our teams and doing the best that we can, right? So I love that you said that.
And I love that you just said being resourceful, because whenever I think of human resources, like you resource humans and you kind of connect them to the resources they need to be successful. But at the end of the day, you're very in tune with what your resources are too, to keep you growing and to keep you excelling in your career. And I think that's what's really helped you, is keeping those connections and keeping those bridges intact to where you're always networking and you're always keeping those relationships strong.
Yeah, no, that's definitely helped a lot. And then just trusting also the right people, right? I've come across some great leaders and thanking them forever because they believed in me when I didn't, right? There were some times where I'm like, why am I even in this position? But really having those people that will say, hey, don't worry, I've got your back, or I'm going to train you, I'm going to support you, and you can do this. But also I will tell you this, and I tell all the students that I talk to when I do speeches and stuff at colleges, always stay humble, right? Because you just never know. You just don't. You have to kind of remember where you come from, and just always staying humble to be able to just support the team around you, and also just know when to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
It's my biggest thing.
And I think you can seek that out in others now, where you were so thankful that somebody saw something in you that you maybe didn't know was within you, and they're not surprised of your success. And now you're like, I can kind of seek people out like that and say, you're the next big thing, and I'm going to help you get there. When I hear kind of your career movement and just your openness to try something new, and knowing that it might be a little bit scary, I might fumble a little bit, but at the end of the day, I've got to go for it. And I think it's all about kind of being open to change. Maybe it's being agile, or being able to adapt to some things that are maybe put in your arena that you're not expecting, right? So I think that this is an area that you've like really excelled in when it comes to going to new places, trying new things. So if you were to have to give advice or just speak to kind of your philosophy around change and around embracing it, or just anything that you can give in regards to your mindset around change.
Yeah. Anything that it's uncomfortable, you should try it. I think that's, at the beginning of my career, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I just really like it here and everything's great and everything's perfect and I finally have everything how I like it. But you can only learn so far. You can learn so much doing that, right? Now I got to a point where I actually get excited to go to properties that could use some structure, could use some new ideas and initiatives. And I've learned a lot through that. So it's been uncomfortable at times because, of course, you're dealing with new leadership, or if you go to a job where you had 3 to 4 managers that you report to, and you're like trying to adjust, but the person before was this way, and that helps you. And I think if you believe that you have an opportunity that you think it would be good for you, go for it. At the end of the day, being uncomfortable is good. It's also sometimes a motivating factor, right? And I had a boss that said to me, and I was talking to her recently, and I reminded her and I quoted her on her own words because she was having a hard time with a new opportunity that she's doing. And I said, you used to tell me, I like it that you're a little scared, and I like it that you're a little so hard on yourself and you're so stressed, is what she used to say to me. Because that means that you're always going to give it 100%. The other day she was having a bad day. I'm like, remember you said that you were always so stressed? And so it's good. It's good sometimes to be uncomfortable, and of course having a balance, not to be stressed all the time, is good for you. But I do think that being uncomfortable is good. And then just taking chances and taking risk, because when you're trying new things and you're overcoming those things, it helps you grow. It really does. Because it makes you think, and it makes you overcome those challenging times where someone doesn't want the change. And that was actually, something I had to learn. Okay, what approach do I use when someone's been doing the same thing for 20 years? And, there's me coming in thinking, hey, there's an easier way to do it, way more effective. I bet you'll be fine. And maybe saying, hey, why don't we try it? And if we don't like it, we'll go back to it, so just learning how to adjust to different individuals, and assessing and observing and connecting with different personalities. And it's been fun. So I just always tell people, if it's uncomfortable, it's okay sometimes, but taking this risk, it's a great, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks throughout this whole thing too. And they talk about, hey, failure, sometimes it's okay, because that teaches you how to get back up. If you have this perfect scenario and perfect life, then when things get sort of kind of difficult later on, you're going to fall apart. So, it's just get uncomfortable. It's okay sometimes. And I think you learn the most when you're in those tough situations. So I'm a big believer of, when you put yourself, or you're put in situations that are super challenging and difficult, anything after that, it's a walk in the park, as we'll like to say. But so I enjoy situations like that. I think it's good for us.
I love everything that you just said. Well, the first thing I wanted to note is that your mention of, if you feel uncomfortable, it's okay. And the fact that you come into every situation so confidently. So it's a little bit refreshing to know that even Sara Rojas has that feeling of discomfort when it's like, maybe you're approaching a new leader and you don't know their style yet, but you have some ideas that you want to bounce off of them. Maybe there's a little bit of that queasy or that nervousness about having that conversation for the first time. And I also love that you mentioned, and I think this plays into what I know about your preferences, is your structure. And for you to embrace change, or when something needs to change, or in this case of this year, you don't have an option, things are going to have to change due to the pandemic, whatever the case may be. It seems like you embrace them with your structure, and that's your style of being able to create that plan and be able to see it through, right? And you mentioned too, just knowing yourself, and you also knowing your team. How do they need to deal with change? What's going to make them comfortable, and knowing that my comfort level might be different than theirs, but where can we meet halfway, or where can we come to the agreement that this has got to change? And I loved your approach of, maybe they've been doing this for 20 years, and let me say, okay, I get that. here's some ideas, and that way there might be some issues with it. Let's try this new way and see if we can come together. So
yeah, exactly. And I think it's also about their buy-in, right? You want to make sure that when you're implementing new things and new ideas, and you want to make sure they believe in what it is that you're rolling out, or what it is that you're trying to help them with. And my goal is always to make sure that I'm there to support my team, and I am one of those HR leaders that says to them, hey, you tell me what you need. Tell me exactly how quickly do you want it done. I'll tell you if it's possible or not. And let's come up with some plans. Let's brainstorm together. The approach that could work with Sally might not work with Larry. And that's completely okay. And I also love that. I do love getting to know just the way people are wired. And to me, it's so entertaining. Sometimes I wonder if I should have gone into like psychology or something. Just kind of get to know somebody, and sometimes just getting to understand, okay, give me a little bit more background on why you don't, or maybe they've tried it and it didn't work. So
right.
It's definitely fun. That's been a fun part of my change when I've changed to new locations. The whole discovery phase, it's been really fun. But of course, it's always gratifying when what you suggested, they loved it. I'm like, oh, okay. Competitive side of me too, though, right? I'm gonna make it my mission to prove to you that I'm gonna help you. It's all about adjusting, and whatever the client wants is how I look at it. Whatever our client, which are our leaders and department heads and the people, will adjust, and we'll just find better ways to make it easy for you. That's kind of my motto when it comes to HR.
I like that a lot. It sounds like you focus on being of service at the end of the day. I love the way you said that. You don't want to deter them from doing the operation, which at the end of the day is why we have paychecks, right? And you understand that, and you want to help them. I think you do a good job of leveling with them. So I think any of our, at whatever industry you're in, it's always just bringing yourself back to what am I here to do? Be of service, not to look right, or to be smart, or to be impressive in this moment where I have this great idea. It's right. I came up with this idea because it's going to help you. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to explain that, or it takes a different approach depending on who you're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. I found this quote by Maya Angelou that says, if you can't change it, change your attitude. And I thought that. So, I mean, seriously, right? If you can't change it, we can't change what's going on right now, but what can we control, right?
I love that, Audrey. It's so funny because that's kind of how a lot of us leaders that were still at the property, even when the hotels were shut down, it was that specifically, hey, this is where we are. All we can do is just day by day. And, there were some days, and of course, when for us in HR, really anyone that is used to working with people day to day, face to face, it was sad coming to work, and it's quiet and it's terrible, and it's 10 of us versus 200 plus, and still trying to do our little rounds and a little circle, which is us, and trying to stay positive, because you're right, there's nothing we can do besides just we're gonna just roll with whatever the new day, because every day was something new. It's all about attitude, and I think that I love that you're saying that, because I tell all my employees that come back, we do our little training to come back to work, and my last slide that I added basically talks about that. It said, just keep in mind, it's all about teamwork and relying on each other, and it's all about adjusting to the new normal, because it's gonna be like this for a minute, and we're here to back you up, but you also have to just be ready and mentally ready to come back to something completely different. And it's okay if you're struggling, come talk to us, but we will back you up. But it's all about attitude and staying positive as much as you can, right?
Yeah, and I think the way that you kind of, the words that you use to me too, is I think that you have a very positive outlook, and it's not that you're oblivious or that you don't understand that this year has been like a crap sandwich. Like it's a big heaping pile of crap sandwich. Like we are well aware of that, but it's like, can we control it? We can't. What can I control is my outlook. And yes, we're going to empathize, and we're going to have the conversations, right? And we're going to, you see how hard your team's working out on the floor, and you're going to, make sure that they have somebody to talk to, and all of that good stuff. And I think that shines through in the way that you lead your team. At the end of the day, a lot of these things we can't control. What we can control, let's grab hold of that. Let's see what we can change. Maybe it's a policy process that we can change to make it a little better. But it's one of those things we can't change.
Yeah.
We're gonna change our attitude, right? find
Exactly.
any
So
way to
it's
look at it. So no, I appreciate your saying that, because I think that your experience right now and what you're leading your team through is, like I said, you're really going to have seen it all and done it all, and whatever the next years have to bring, knock on wood,
I know.
come close to this year. I like to end all of the episodes with a little bit of like rapid fire question time. So
Let's do it.
what's kind of your favorite way to keep learning? Is it the audiobooks? Is there a particular one you're listening to that you like? What's kind of your avenue or your method of learning?
Yeah, I just entered this like I unexpected, honestly, journey, just like personally, as far as like fitness goals, and which is connected to my mental state. So I heard this book. I can't even remember how I found it. But I'm an Audible person just because I'm very ADD, so I like to be doing stuff, multitask essentially.
Yeah.
So even when I'm cleaning my house, when I'm walking the dog, I have headphones on, and I like to be able to do things. And then driving, right? So I recently just finished Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I don't know if you've heard of him, but love this book, and I recommend it to everyone. Navy SEAL, crazy story growing up, and all about the mental state, right? It's all about making sure that even though life throws crazy things at you, and sometimes it's gonna suck really bad, it's how you look at it. Can I make something out of this? And the guy did. So highly recommend it. It has kickstarted me on this like positive, determined, like, I can't even tell you, sometimes I'm in the middle of a workout and I'm like done, and I'm like, what would David Goggins do? Run a little faster. And of course he curses through the video. Yeah. So I like curse at myself. I'm like, come on, Sarah. And it's so funny because my boyfriend, sometimes I'll say like, well, David Goggins wouldn't quit. He ran 100 miles with broken feet. Like, what it was, so you can do it, crazy things. And so phenomenal book, recommended. It really got me in this like focus mode. So you tend to usually listen to YouTube motivational videos too. The Rock, love his stuff. Dwayne Johnson, his motivational videos, or anything that really talks about, we're gonna fall and just get back up, and things are gonna get difficult. And so I tend to do that. But my morning routine, so I can't do my makeup with headphones because they're like the big ones, and my hair, so I have to put it on speaker. And Kyle's like, yeah, I hear your motivational videos every morning, and sometimes they're yelling, and I'm like, well, you're a heavy
sleeper. Get up and go.
I need it as part of my routine. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't bother me, it's fine. So I usually do that, and then of course a couple of podcasts. I just started listening to oh my gosh, I can't remember his name, but he's an NBA player that just interviews people that either athletes or people that have been very successful, and just really, really great story. It's called The Pursuit of Healthiness. And so he's basically just trying to kind of learn new techniques from other people, like sleeping patterns. So he like interviews somebody that has that background. My favorite one that he did recently, he interviewed Oksana Masters. She is, I don't know if you've heard of her. She is a pretty much an Olympic athlete that lost both of her legs, was an orphan from Ukraine. Phenomenal story. And you hear her on the podcast, and this girl is just like the best attitude. Like, I want to be friends with her. And has had a crazy life. And once again, she's like, I'm not a victim. I'm all good. I'm really big on just kind of those self-motivational books. And as you know, with the athlete mindset, I love just listening to things that talk about routines and what can you do. Things such as drink a glass of water when you first wake up. It gets your body going, or add a little bit of lemon. So I'm really kind of big on that, and it does keep me very focused. As you know, working out, it's a big part of my routine. It almost, and it's not so much for the physical aspect of it as far as like trying to be lean or anything, but it truly just gets my mindset going. And people that work will know, they're like, did you go to the gym this morning? And I'm like, how do you know? Because you're all perky and you have all this energy. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, because I feel like I've accomplished something already, even if it's 30 to 40 minutes. I was telling you this morning, I didn't get to go to the gym this morning because I canceled the 6 a.m. classes, and my day just started off. I mean, I just knew it, Audrey, and was talking to one of my friends and I said, I'm not going to let today get to me. It's trying. You know, my boiled eggs exploded in the microwave. I left my laptop at home. My juice spilled a little bit, not too much, but it never does. And I was like fighting with myself and I was trying to laugh my way through it. I go to Starbucks and Starbucks people are always nice. The guy was a little sassy. I'm like, since when?
Today of all days.
I'm like, what? So it's just one of those things where I like refused to get my day to get crazy. But to answer your question, Audible books.
No, that was great. Because I honestly was going to ask you too if you had like a morning routine. So that's so important as well. So seriously, before you can do anything, you know that you've got to drink that water, and then you can check your phone or whatever you really want to do when you wake up, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to also kind of stay away from the phone, unless it's for like some podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, you listen to some of these books that talks about if the first thing you're going to see in the morning it's, you know, social media. It's just what is it doing, right? So I try to kind of start with either sometimes I'll even just do LinkedIn. It's so weird.
Yeah.
For the sake of doing something. But I'm also a morning person.
You want to get all that you can squeeze out of that day, right?
Yeah, poor Kyle. He's not a morning person. So
I was going to say.
Like, I want to go to breakfast at 8. He's like, it's Sunday. I'm like, I know, but then we're done by 9 and then I still have time. And he just looks at me like, you're crazy. It's all good. Look.
All right. What show are you currently binging? Or is there a Netflix or Hulu or Amazon show that you're into right now?
So I'm a huge crime junkie person. Just any documentary, any show, anything that has to do with trying to figure things out. I'm actually rewatching Dexter because there's a new season coming out. So super, you know, loving that. I'm a huge Criminal Minds fan, rewatching that again. And then I just finished the American Murder Story, the true story that is trending on Netflix right now.
Yes, I watched that as well.
And I'm also the one friend that will tell them, okay, guys, here's the deal. If you ever go on a blind date, you need to make sure if anything happens, you scratch, you like swallow their hair. I mean, we're
get
talking
that
like
DNA.
And they think I'm paranoid, but I'm like, you know, you just never know. I try to be very aware. So even when I'm out and about, I try not to like be on my phone because I'm like, what if one day
you need to be paying attention?
They're like, she was a witness. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, I do remember that person with the red shirt and the black hat. Yes.
I do the same thing. My new office, I'm by a window. Whenever I hear something weird, I'm like,
we never know
things. I was like, she has a yellow jacket on. You just don't know when you're supposed to know something or could help somehow.
FBI could be knocking on your door and you could help save a life.
That's right. Love it. I didn't know that about you, but I'm glad that we're finding that one. Okay. Last question. Are you ready?
Yes.
So, what is the best advice you would give anybody who's struggling or feels overwhelmed by this year? All the changes, all the things that we can't control. Like, what would they're coming into your HR office, Sarah. HR the crap out of them. What would you say?
It's so funny you say that. So when it comes to that, I typically say this, which is so funny because a lot of people probably look at me like, what? When I have situations like that, when I have someone that is genuinely just either falling apart or just having a hard time with work or things in general, I usually say, taking my HR hat off, like Sarah to person. Because a lot of people think, oh, HR's here or HR's walking around. I'm like, hey guys, Sarah, HR has a name and I'm a person too. I try to just really understand and ask questions and kind of see if I don't know their story already, understand a little bit more what's going on. But I try to also, depending on what it is, give some tips on switching up the routine. I think it's huge. I have personally fallen in some, you know, throughout the last several years in a hole where I'm like, I feel that nothing makes me happy or my routine is bland, and just trying new things. I suggest, you know, maybe podcasts or maybe just getting outside, not to work out, but maybe just be outside, just changing factors in your day to day that sometimes will make you just think clearer and feel better. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge. And I know with quarantine, a lot of people are working from home. Just changing routine a little bit helps if what you're doing doesn't work. I'm also huge, huge, huge believer, and it may have to do with the fact that, I grew up in Colombia, and well, the transition here was difficult, and I don't really believe on, playing victim. I think that we all have the ability to control our own factors, and I think that if something doesn't work and if something doesn't make you happy, we have the ability to change that. And it might not necessarily be the financial piece. Of course, if you lost your job, it's a different story. But I think when we talked about earlier, the way you look at things and the way that you can say, okay, well, you know what, I lost my job today, possibly something bigger and better is going to come out of it. I've had some stories where they loved serving, but because of this, decided to pursue a college degree and now have a job in the industry that they wanted to go for, So I think it's okay for us to take a minute and be sad about it. I think when we're having a hard time, sit in the garage and cry and close the door if you want to, and have that, because I think we need that sometimes too. I think pretending to be like we're okay is also not the best. Or having that one friend that you trust or a significant other that you want to broke down to, but then pick yourself back up, right? Yeah. And take control of your life, because no one's going to do it for you. I mean, it's possible that you have one or two people that can probably say, don't worry, I'll back you up. And at the end of the day, how quickly you're turning around, it's going to be on your own time and your own pace. And anyone that, comes to me, any friends or family that, throw the whole, I don't know what to do, and the whole life sucks and I'm miserable and boo me, I'm like, you know what? Let's snap out of it. Like, let's regroup. Let's look at the logistics of everything. Because I just think that we all have the ability to control our own destiny, and it might not be when we think it's going to be right away. Like, buck up. It's okay. It's going to get hard and it's going to suck, and it sucks for all of us at times. But have a little bit of sad and let's rally. A lot of people quote me and then I'm like, let's rally. It's rally mode. Okay, we can do this. And
rally cap on.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, just have to, you have to want it, you have to want it bad enough, and no one's going to do that for you unless, I don't know, you have someone that always picks you up. But then if that person's gone one day, then what are you going to do? So best advice is buck up. It's okay when things get hard. When things get hard is when we learn the most. And I think that people sometimes look at the negative. It's an awful situation, which of course certain circumstances are bad. Yeah. But sometimes those are the ones that make us stronger, and we just don't know right away what the long-term lesson will be, because sometimes it takes years and you're like, wow, why did that happen? But my best lessons have been through those challenging, difficult times. And, as simple as my mom dragging me to the States when I didn't want to leave Colombia. And I just remember hating my life. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this country. I don't speak the language. People laugh at me. And I was an athlete back home. And now look, and I'm like, gosh, Mom, thanks. Mm-hmm. I'm here today because she forces into things like that. So, So like what you said, it's all about the mindset and the outlook, but it's also okay to be sad and take a minute to just feel those, everything sucks, but don't stay in that stage too long because then nothing good comes out of that.
That was so good. Oh my gosh. And I love your story too, when you said, well, thanks, Mom, like we have to leave and now your thanks is no longer sarcastic, because you're like, thank you. Like, look what I was able to make of this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I think what you just said, Sarah, was so helpful, because I think that sometimes people go through the same motion every day. This is, I'm not happy with what's going on. I have no control with what's going on, but they wake up, they check their phone, they go on social media, they don't go to the gym, they don't get outside and walk, they don't drink the water that's going to make their body feel better. And sometimes it snowballs and we don't even realize, oh my gosh, I have really bad habits, or what can I do that's changing my routine to see things a little bit differently? And I think that's a great place to start. Journal, write down, what did I do today? And I felt awful. What was missing here? Do I need to call my mom? Maybe my mom is the one that was missing from my day to help, bring me out of this hole that I'm in. And you said too, feel your feelings. Yes, it sucks. We all have those moments where we're just like, oh my gosh, what is going on right now?
And it happens. And hey, it builds us up, right? It's like, okay, And at that moment, you were like, everything's so terrible. And sometimes, like, later on, you're like, oh, okay. It wasn't as bad, but maybe it was, right? So reach out to a friend if you need to sometimes, but the right friend, right? Don't reach out to the one that's going to make you drink 7 days straight.
The Band-Aid that's not going to help.
Exactly. So it's we're all going to be okay, I think. And it's just a matter of finding the right tools that work for all of us, because there's no mold for everybody. I think everyone has different ways that works. Yeah. It's just fine. And then trial and error, right? It's just finding what works for you and just kind of owning it and go from there. So
yeah,
we're going to be okay, hopefully.
We're going to be okay. I hope that all my listeners have a Sara in their life, because I think you just really put it into perspective for us. And I think you are the expert to speak on this right now, just in general with what you've endured this year, but then just your career and where you've been in your life. And I think that you have such great experiences to call on to say, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to feel the feelings. We're going to have some hard days that really suck. But at the end of the day, we're going to try our best every day to control what we can. And that's through our routine. That's through the people we surround ourselves with, and just continuing to learn whatever avenue you want to learn through. I think that's very important as well.
I'm just glad that you thought I was nice the first time we met.
You were so nice. I saw this house a little bit later, but it was all in good fun. Always in good fun. No, but Sara, I kept you late on a Monday night, and I really appreciate your openness to be on the podcast. Is this your first podcast?
Yes, I was so nervous.
You did so good. You crushed it.
No, thanks for having me.
I feel like we talked for like 4 more hours too. Everything you said, I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. Then I was like, oh crap, it's almost 10 p.m.